Thousands of Minnesota high school students who lost their jobs in the COVID-19 pandemic could make up some of those lost wages. The Minnesota Court of Appeals ruled that impacted high school students will now be eligible for pandemic unemployment assistance. $14 to $28 million has been set aside for teens across the state. Reporter Kate Raditz shares how a group of students brought the issue forward to make a change.
My family never had a lot of money, so I learned the value of family and the value of the dollar really pretty quickly when I was young.
Cole Stevens was in his senior year at Roosevelt High School in Minneapolis when COVID-19 arrived in Minnesota in March. He was close to graduating while working part-time at a coffee shop in Bloomington.
Right as I'm ready to do that, a global pandemic and the biggest and most historic recession that we've seen since the Great Depression comes along.
Stevens' hours were cut and then the coffee shop closed. At first, he did receive some unemployment assistance.
I got a letter from the Department of Economic Development and Employment saying that I needed to pay all of that money back to them. So even worse than being broke, I was now in debt.
But now a new court ruling says teenagers like Stevens can receive assistance under the Federal CARES Act. A small group of students pursued the lawsuit along with the Minneapolis-based Youth Prize. The nonprofit said the decision will be especially beneficial for young people who are Black, Indigenous, and people of color who are adversely affected by the impacts of the pandemic.
About a quarter of Black and Latino high school students who are working contribute at least 41% of their household's income.
Director of the Center for School Change, Joe Nathan, says the local ruling will have big implications for students around the country.
Under federal law, at least as interpreted by the Minnesota Court of Appeals, high school students all over the United States who have lost jobs due to COVID-19 would be due this money.
Kate Raditz, WCCO 4 News.
Students are still not eligible for state unemployment benefits. Eligible high school students need to apply for pandemic unemployment assistance by December 25th. The benefits are also retroactive. The Gap store is closing at West Acres Mall. Mall management saying that Gap has been a struggling brand and many Gap stores across the country are closing. The store will be shut down by the end of January. Now, earlier, the mall announced the opening of Athleta, which is a woman's activewear brand and owned by Gap. They still plan on opening in winter of 2021. Law enforcement officers in the area joining forces today to ring bells and raise money for the Salvation Army. They were spread out at 20 Kettle sites as part of the Kettle campaign. They do this every year. They're competing with realtors and firefighters as to who and each of them get their own full day of bell ringing.
It's good. It's really, really good to be back out, you know, being able to interact with people a little bit, but also be able to do something for a great organization that does so much, not just for our department, but for our entire community.
Salvation Army has been serving Cass and Clay counties for 120 years. Up next in sports, the decision has been made on the starting quarterback for the Eagles this weekend. Beth is in with the coach's choice.